Welcome to Deer Dirt. On this episode, we're going to change things up a little bit, and I'm not going to be in the field on our farm talking about how to produce big whitetails. Rather, I'm going to be in the office talking about how to produce a really good HuntStand Hunt Area map. So I've got, well, most people are going to use the app, and I get that. It's a lot more portable. It's right here in your hand, super easy to use, but it's harder to see that when you're producing a video. So I'm going to produce it on my computer screen, and then I'm going to sync it to the app on my phone when I'm done. So let's start with creating a hunt area. Okay, so I am on the HuntStand website, and I need to create a new hunt area. So I'm going over here to the left edge, and it says Manage Hunt Areas. I'm going to click that, and this brings up one that I've got, an existing one. The one that I want to create, this was my lease. Beautiful area. I mean, I had some really good hunts there. But the piece that I bought is a little ways away, just a few miles away. So this is the new hunt area. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click New Hunt Area, and then just come on to the middle of this property that we now own, and then just click that. So that's the new hunt area. So I'm going to call it Winky Farm. I've had Winky Farm in the past, so it showed up in the drop down. So it's going to be Winky Farm, and then I'm going to click Create. So now every time I open up the app or the program on my computer, it's going to come straight to this spot. But I want to change this just a little bit. I don't want to have, I'm going to change up the attributes. So I'm going to hit Manage Hunt Areas. I'm going to click that one. It says Settings. So I don't want this to be public. I'm kind of a private guy, right? I don't want everybody that searches for me to find this. And I'm not even sure how that works. All I know is the word private just feels a lot better to me when I'm describing my hunting farm. So I click Save. Okay, so now the general location is detailed here. So now this hunt area comes up, so I've got all of the attributes. Anything I want to add to this, I can easily add. First thing I'm going to put in is the border. And I come up to the top right, and you can see there's a feature called Add Shape. So I'm going to click that, and I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know exactly where the border is on this thing, you know, because there's a lot of valleys and so forth. If it was real straightforward, I would just be able to draw it in. So I'm going to go over to the layer that has Property Info. Now you can see it pops up with the names. And I can go ahead and real quickly, I can start very roughly putting in the property lines. And I'm not going to stress over this too much right now just because it's going to take too long. So I just created it. If I click Boundary, now it shows default is red. I'm good with that. No fill, done. Okay, so I'm going to change the background now. I'm going to go back to the hybrid. Okay, so there's the property. That's the boundary, more or less. That's pretty rough, but let's look at some features that we can add to this. So one of the features that I know I'm going to want to put on this map that I can share with other people that are using the property, whether it's family or friends, would be the location of my trail cameras. And I can go over here on the left margin where it says trail cameras, click that. Now it comes up and asks me whether I want to manage tags or add a new camera. I'm going to select an area on the map for the new camera. It's going to be right there. So I'm not going to put a whole bunch of extra information on here because I just don't really care what the camera model is. Maybe I'll someday come back and name this location, call it maybe Open Gate. Done. So now I've got a camera location right here. So let's do another one. Up on the right side now, it showed up as Add Trail Camera. So I'm going to put another one. I know I'm going to have one over in this area right here. So I'm going to call that Old Pasture. Old Pasture, done. So now I've got 2 cameras shown on here. Let's do one more, just for the sake of being thorough. Okay, so now I've got 3 cameras shown. I'm going to put some stand locations in too, just so that I've got those. And again, these are going to be easy for me to remember looking at the map, because I do tend to forget where some of that stuff is. And I know I've got a stand on this ridge. So I'm going to put a marker there, stands, it's a hang on, done. Do I want to name it? I'll just call it Ridge. Okay, so that one's done. I know I've got one down here in the scrape tree, we call it. Scrape tree is an awesome spot. I'm going to call that one Scrape Tree. That's where I shot my buck last season. And I don't have a ton of stands on the farm, so I don't have to get too crazy about putting a bunch of them on here. But when the time comes, I know I'm going to have more. And this will be an easy way for me to keep track of them all. I'm going to call this one Big Timber Line, if I can spell. Big Timber Line. Right on the fence line back in the woods. And this spot here, it's actually a blind. So I'm going to put that as a ground blind. So that's going to show up as a different icon. I'm going to name that one Old Pasture. So now you can see I've got 3 stands, 1 ground blind. I might even put in 1 more ground blind. The idea is to be as complete and thorough as you can be, because this becomes then like a living document. You can come back and look at this years later, or like I said, you can share it with a friend and tell them, well, let's go to the Old Pasture stand. Whatever the case may be, they know exactly what you're talking about. We'll call this one Small Corn, since there was a little cornfield up there. Okay, I've got a few features in place. One of the things that I really need to hit on are the entry and exit routes. We start at the house, go up the valley. This kind of shows maybe path, trail. So that shows the entry route to that stand. I'm going to call it Scrape Tree Entry. Done. So I'm starting here, go up this valley. So we parked the 4-wheeler right there. So I'm going to call that Road. And then I'm going to create another one. Ridge Road. So I'm going to create another one from there up to the stand. And that's going to be Path. And that's, I'm going to call that Final Approach. So again, you know, I can remember all of this more easily, and I can show it to somebody, and they can understand that, okay, you're following the road, 4-wheeler, then you walk the last little stretch up the bluff to the stand. Let's see, what else do I normally use? I'm a big fan of some of these other layers, a huge fan, in fact. Map box. So I pull this up a lot because I look at the terrain features. I'm a huge believer that deer movement is influenced more by terrain than almost anything else that the deer encounter. Obviously, hunting pressure and food make a huge difference too, but how they move through an area is very predictable based on the terrain. So I'm constantly looking at the topo maps. So the one I pulled up here, that background was map box. And again, all of my icons, all of my features stayed right with it. The only thing that changed was the background. So I can look at this and say, well, boy, I really need to look at this ditch that runs up this draw. I need to make an icon there and put something here. What am I going to call that? Scouting. I'm going to call it I'm going to call it trail crossing for now, and just have that be a scouting point. I'm going to call it scouting 1. So that's a spot that I need to look at. Let's see if there's some more. Let's see. Some more that are obvious. Well, anytime you've got a big ridge top like this, you know, and here's an even bigger one here. Here's a really big one here. The deer tend to bed on those. And I do like sitting in those spots in the mornings during the rut. So I think I'm going to mark that as a spot that I need to scout right here. So I'm going to call that bedding. So this is going to be scout 2. Since I'm not sure exactly whether it's a spot I want to hunt or not, but it's definitely one that I want to scout. So I can do an awful lot of my scouting right here, sitting at my desk in my office, and then I can just go on site, maybe even the day of the hunt, and confirm those spots that they really are as good as what they think they are. With a little experience, you can get really good at predicting based on the terrain where the great spots are going to be. And you don't have to do tons and tons of on-the-ground scouting. There's some obvious advantages to that. I mean, using the topo layer and the area layers here on HuntStand, I can eliminate a lot of scouting time, and I can eliminate a lot of ground scent, human scent, especially during the season. I mean, it's fun to go all over the farm during the off season, you know, shed hunting, doing some really thorough scouting. But if you don't have the time to do that, say you're coming into the game a little bit late, or you're trying to adjust on the fly because the spots that you picked out just aren't producing, then the less human scent that you leave, the better, because you want to keep that element of surprise in your favor. You don't want the deer to have any experience with human activity, you know, deep in their living room until that moment, you know, when the arrow comes out of the tree. So being able to do this kind of off-site scouting is super critical. I think that's the most important aspect of the HuntStand app to me. It's not drawing up all of this stuff, although it's nice to have that to jog my memory. It's really about trying to figure out on the fly as the season is going where I need to be adjusting, how I need to be adjusting. You know, what entry routes should I use? Because now I can look at it, I can zoom in, and I can say, well, I can go right up this valley, or, you know, I've got spots where, you know, maybe I've got access roads, you know, where I can get into certain places. You know, coming in off the corner, off the gravel road, off the county road, you start using the maps as active tools, an active part of your strategy. It's not something that you just look at once in a while and it's passive. This is something that every single day I'm pulling it up, looking at it, trying to figure out how am I going to get into this spot or that spot. You know, where should I place my stand? The spot where I put it didn't work. I saw a big deer, you know, cross the field over here. You know, what adjustment do I need to make? That's where this stuff really shines. So, okay, now let's say I've got this detailed, and there's tons of other features. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface. There are some other layers that I really like, and you know, the monthly satellite is pretty cool. You know, that loads a little bit slower here, but you can see this shows July 2023. So I'm going to change that to, let's say, May. Let's go April. See, that's an old pasture. And now, you know, looking at the difference between April and, you know, we'll just pick, let's see, June of 2023. So now you can see it's all crops in there. So that's going to change the huntability of that area, you know, how the deer are using that area. Just being able to go month by month and look through the property and see how things have changed, whether it's a permission property or, you know, I guess in some cases, maybe even on public land, if there are any changes, say water levels, different things that, you know, that might affect deer movement. So I'm going to go ahead and send a copy of this, share a copy of this with my employee, Ethan Stubbs. Ethan needs to know. He needs to know where my stands are, where the trail cameras are. So I'm hitting Ethan Stubbs, invite. You know, if you dive into this, as I mentioned, there's lots of other features. I'm pretty basic in how I use aerial photos and topo maps, but I rely on them very heavily, especially during the season when I'm trying to figure out what adjustments to make. This one right here is my favorite, the map box. And boy, it's a game changer when you can have it right in the palm of your hand. Now when I click sync on the app, it will put all of this all these changes that I just made to my hunt area onto the version that's on my phone. So I don't have to be connected to the internet all the time in order to use that. It'll be a permanent part of, you know, when I click up the app. But you do have to sync it. Once you've made changes on the computer, then you have to sync it, you know, on your app. And it's easy to do. There's a button on there. So there you go. That's it. You know, hopefully you get a chance to test this out because it's pretty killer. I've had some unbelievable success over the years with going in cold into areas that I've not hunted before or barely hunted, or when I'm making adjustments, and using the aerial photos and the topo maps just like this to pick out the best stand locations. Well, I appreciate you joining me. We'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Deer Dirt.